There are certain things you never question about the people you love. You accept them the way you accept the weather, just a fact of your world, steady and unchanged. My brother Daniel was like that, steady, unchanging. And for 32 years, every second Tuesday of every single month, he drove 90 miles away from home and came back before dark. Every single time. I was 8 years old the first time I noticed. I remember standing at the kitchen window, watching his old blue sedan disappear down the road, dust rising behind it like a question I didn't know how to ask. I turned to my mother, and she just shook her head the smallest amount, like she knew and had already decided not to know. I learned, very quickly, not to ask either. As the years went on, Daniel's Tuesday ritual became just Daniel. It was woven into who he was, like his crooked smile, or the way he always smelled faintly of cedar, or how he could fix any broken thing in the house, but always refused to talk about his feelings. He was the kind of man who carried things silently. We all thought that was just strength. We were wrong. He never married, he had friends, a job he was respected at, a small house with a garden he tended carefully. From the outside, Daniel's life looked perfectly ordinary, content even, but there was always this distance in him, this part of himself he kept locked away so tightly that none of us ever found the door. I tried once, I think I was about 19, sitting beside him on his porch on a warm summer evening. I had built up the courage for weeks. "Danny, where do you go on Tuesdays?" He looked at me for a long moment, his jaw worked silently. Then he smiled, that crooked, heartbreaking smile, and said, "Nowhere important, little one, just somewhere I need to be." I didn't push. I should have pushed, because what I didn't know that day was that Daniel's nowhere important was the most important place in the world, and it would take his death to make me understand why. He passed quietly on a Sunday morning in October, heart failure, 63 years old. We buried him on a Wednesday, and I held myself together through all of it, the service, the flowers, the neighbors with their kind, empty words. I was numb. And I stayed numb until I found the box. It was 3 weeks after the funeral. I had volunteered to clear out Daniel's house, partly because I wanted to be close to him one last time, and partly because I didn't trust myself to feel anything if I stayed in my own home alone. I moved through his rooms slowly, folding his shirts, wrapping his books, touching things he had touched. The box was in the back of his bedroom wardrobe, behind an old winter coat. It was a simple tin box, the kind you'd keep receipts in or old photographs, but it was padlocked, and sitting on top of it, in an envelope with my name written in Daniel's careful handwriting, was a small silver key. My hands were shaking before I even opened the envelope. Inside was a single folded letter. It read, "My darling sister, if you're reading this, then I've already gone, and I'm sorry. Sorry I was too much of a coward to say this to your face, but I need you to know the truth. I need someone who loved me to finally know. Open the box, and please don't think less of me." I sat down on the edge of his bed, and I cried for a long time before I could bring myself to use that key. What was inside the box shattered me completely, but not in the way I expected. There were photographs, hundreds of them, a woman with kind eyes and dark hair, a little boy at various ages, 4, 7, 10, 16, grinning at the camera in the way that boys do when they don't know the world can be complicated. Birthday cards, report cards, a hand-drawn card that said, "Happy Father's Day, Dad," in wobbly crayon letters. My brother had a son. For 32 years, every second Tuesday, Daniel drove 90 miles to be that boy's father, quietly, privately, without ever asking for recognition or celebration. The woman in the photographs, her name was Miriam, had been his first love before our family moved away when he was 20. She had been pregnant when they separated, and he hadn't known until the boy was already 2 years old. By then, Miriam had built her own life, and Daniel, Well, Daniel had chosen to be present in the only way she would allow, a visit, twice a month, no more, no less. His son's name was Samuel. There was a final letter in the box, addressed to Samuel, unsealed, meant to be read. Daniel's handwriting filled 4 full pages. He wrote about the drives, about sitting in the car for 10 minutes each time, outside whatever house or school or park where Samuel was, steadying his heart before he knocked. About the fear, always the fear, that one day Samuel wouldn't want him there. About how proud he was, how deeply, quietly proud. Until everything changed, I realized the distance I had always seen in Daniel wasn't coldness, it was grief. The grief of a man who loved enormously, but lived in pieces, stitching himself back together every second Tuesday just to make it to the next one. It took me 2 weeks to find him. Samuel was 32 years old, living in a small city 2 states away, working as a teacher. When I found his contact information, I sat at the phone in my hand for 3 hours before I pressed call. I didn't know what I would say. I didn't know if he even knew about me. He picked up on the third ring. Hello? And the moment I heard his voice, calm, careful, a little guarded, I heard Daniel. I heard my brother in a stranger's voice, and I completely fell apart. My name is Claire, I managed. I think you knew my brother, Daniel. There was a long silence, and then Samuel said quietly, I've been waiting for this call for 3 weeks. He had known Daniel had passed, Miriam had told him, and Samuel, this kind, quiet young man, had been grieving alone, not knowing whether Daniel's family even knew he existed, not knowing whether he was allowed to grieve at all. We talked for 4 hours that night, and then again the next night. He told me about the visits, how Daniel would take him to the park when he was small and to baseball games when he was older, how Daniel never once tried to replace the father Samuel's mother later married, but simply showed up, steady and present and full of a love that never asked for anything back. How Samuel had always called him by his first name in public, but in his heart always knew exactly who Daniel was to him. We met in person a month later. He has Daniel's eyes, the same crooked smile, and when he laughed for the first time that afternoon, I had to look away because it was so much like my brother that it cracked something open in my chest that I think will never fully close. Daniel kept his secret because he was afraid. Afraid of judgment, of complications, of breaking something fragile. But what he didn't understand, what I wish I could go back and tell him, is that love like his doesn't need to hide. It deserved to be seen. He took his secret to his grave, but he also left behind a son who loved him, a story worth telling, and proof that the quietest, most hidden kind of love can still be the most faithful. If Daniel taught me anything, it's this. Don't let fear make you invisible. The people who deserve to see you, they're waiting, and they will love what they find.